I'm like a kid in a candy store right now. I didn't sleep last night. I was so excited. I reached out to this young man on LinkedIn, and most of the time when you reach out to an incredible guy of this stature, most of the time you wait for weeks and weeks, months and years, and you never get a response. I got a response right away, and it showed me the heart of this man right when we jumped on the video call today. I could see his heart, his passion, and what he's doing. I wanted to run these down because, honestly, it's a laundry list. Most of the time, as you guys know, listening to the podcast, I do not read intros, but I have to read this guy's intro because it's incredible. Jason Feifer is a best-selling author of Build for Tomorrow, which we're going to talk about. A startup advisor, the host of the podcast Help Wanted, problem solvers with over 1 million downloads a month. LinkedIn has named him one of the top voices in entrepreneurship. He's had a decades-long career in national media as the editor of Men's Health, Fast Company, Maxim, Boston Magazine, and has written about business and technology in the Washington Post, Slate, the New York Magazine, and is now the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. It is my honor, my pleasure to bring not only to me, but to you, my new friend that I told him that I was going to force him to be my friend for the rest of his life, Mr. Jason Feifer. Let's get this party started.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
The man, the myth, the legend, Jason Feifer. Thank you so much for being on the show today, man. It is my honor and my pleasure.
Oh, man. What's up, Kelly? That was such a nice intro. I really appreciate it.
Hey, and for all those out there listening and watching, and Jason, I could tell you this from my heart. I don't ever read intros, but the intro
I have too many
that you
details.
Hey, no, I mean, it's incredible. I would wear a shirt. Actually, your jacket should have all those printed out on it and a superhero cape that's flying in the wind. I want to jump right in because I know our time is limited today, and I want to help me to understand this build for tomorrow. There was 4 things that I connected with right off the bat, and it hit me hard as I was looking through it. Is panic, adaptation, the new normal, and wouldn't go back. Can you break those down for me?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's the premise of the book. So I have this book. It's called Build for Tomorrow, an action plan for embracing change, adapting fast, and future-proofing your career. Basically, it's the book for when you're going through a big change in your work, although I've had a lot of people tell me that it helped them in their personal life too. And the foundational observation of it is that everybody goes through change in the exact same 4 phases. You panic, which is totally natural, right? We all panic, and we should, because our brains, decades of psychological research have confirmed, our brains are programmed for what's called loss aversion theory, which is to say that we protect against loss far more than we seek gain. So when something new happens in our lives, we equate it with loss. Then we start to say, well, I want to know what's going to happen next. So if I'm losing this thing, then I'm going to lose some other thing, and then I'm going to lose some other thing. We start to extrapolate that loss. It starts to feel like everything around us is disappearing. That's panic. Can't stay in panic forever. Eventually, we start adapting. We look around. We say, what new big things do I have to work with? We start to build a new normal, a new foundation, new circumference and familiarities. And eventually we get to wouldn't go back, that moment where we say, I have something so new and valuable that I wouldn't want to go back to a time before I had it. And here's the thing. If you know that all 4 of these phases are going to happen, if you know that this is the path, it doesn't matter how many times you've been through it, doesn't matter how experienced or inexperienced you are, then you have a choice to make. And that choice is, how fast or slow do you want to move towards wouldn't go back? How much time do you want to spend panicking? How much time do you want to spend looking around and saying, I don't know what to do? Or do we just say, I know there's something good waiting on the other side. Let's move towards it.
So, Jason, you and Nicole were talking about something on the podcast that hit me in my chest.
Mm,
And you guys were talking about when people reach out to you and say, "Can I pick your brain?
hate
can
that.
I buy can I buy you coffee?" And it
Yeah.
was like you guys were talking about it like you just almost don't respond to that. You had a very unique way to be able to do it, but it's interesting to me because this is how we met. So what is
Yeah.
the difference between you connecting and you not connecting from those messages?
Oh man, that's a good question. It almost makes me want to pull up whatever you had sent me initially so I could tell you how I
I've got it
responded to it.
here. I've got it
You
here. So
do?
yes,
Oh,
I do.
great. Tell me. I mean, for context there, so what you're talking about is that so my podcast Help Wanted, where I talk through really tricky work problems and challenging work experiences with my co-host Nicole Lappin. And we and everybody, like sure Kelly, you get it too. Like you hear from everybody, and everybody wants some of your time. And I I actually feel like that if people don't value your time, then they won't treat your time as valuable.
Mm.
And so if you are in a position of giving your time away all the time, then people won't actually treat that time all that seriously. And I used to, and I would love to give as much time as I can to people. I love connecting with people, but as my life has become busier and busier, I've had to draw these lines. And one of the ways that I've done that is by recognizing that actually putting up some barriers to entry for my time, or understanding how I attach my time to specific value. Number one, honors me and the time that I have, because I don't have any more time in the world than anybody else, right? And so we all have the same 24 hours. And also, when I do that, when I increase the barrier, it forces people to think more deeply about if this time is really worth it to them, and therefore what kind of value exchange is necessary. So with that, what did you send me?
So I learned this from my partner now, Greg Reed, who is he started Secret Knock, and we have the #1 networking conference in the world that you can't go to unless you are invited, right? And so we sat down one time, and he said, 3 things will get you anywhere you want to go. Number 1 is ask very, very, very specific questions. Put
Yeah.
like a ridiculous time frame on it, like 3 minutes and 22 seconds, and
Yes.
then actually be willing to do the things that the person told you to do and report back to them. And
Yeah.
so here was my message to you, Jason. Ever since I can remember, I have been a consumer of your magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine. While most kids my age were consuming Sports Illustrated, Us Weekly, I was reading Entrepreneur Magazine. I would be honored to have you as a guest on my podcast. Our show is ranked in the top 1% globally and features legends like you. I look forward to hearing from you. That was on August 29th, 2:58 p.m. By August 30th at 1:31 p.m., you responded.
Yeah, I did. And I'm looking at it now and I can remember what happened. Okay, so this is great. This is like a really great lesson in how to reach out to people. And I think that most people misunderstand what it means to reach out to somebody and to do it cold. And I understand that not everyone is well connected, and depending on what scope you want to look at, nobody's well connected, right? Like I know a bunch of people, but I also don't know a bunch of people, and I'm constantly trying to get in front of people. And so what you want to do is you want to lead with value in whatever way that you can, because the foundational mistake that people make when they are reaching out to somebody else is that they're so focused on what they want that they forget or don't even consider what that other person wants. And you have to know what that other person wants, or you at least have to be able to anticipate it, or you have to be able to offer something that's going to be of some value to them to engage them. And if you do not do that, you will not get what you're looking for. It has to be value first. Here's what you did, Kelly, that was really smart. Okay, so number 1 is people reach out to me all the time and they say, I'm a fan of your work. I'm a fan of Entrepreneur. They leave it at that. at this point, I just assume that's not true. I assume they're just lying to me. Because if they were a fan of my work, they would make some more specific reference, or they'd have something a little more unique to say. Now, you didn't actually make any specific references to my work. That's fine. But, this thing that you said about most kids were consuming Sports Illustrated and Us Weekly, I was reading Entrepreneur. I actually haven't heard somebody phrase it like that before. And it just made me stop and think like, maybe this guy really does read the magazine. And that's really cool. And if you spend time with my work, I instantly feel like I need to fulfill the exchange. You've spent time with me. I need to spend some time with you. I feel that all the time. And I don't always have half an hour to hop on the phone with somebody, but like at the very least, the time that I will spend is engaging and thinking about the thing that you've sent me so that I can respond to it and honor the time that you've spent with me. The next thing that you did is that you invited me on your show, and you described it as this top 1% global show. So, for anybody who knows podcasting, like the numbers are totally mysterious, right? I don't actually know if possibly like your mom is the only one who listens to the show. I don't know. I'm taking you at your word here, but what I did do is I went and I looked up the show and I saw the number of reviews that it had, and that helped me assess that this is something that people are listening to. And then what I did is I responded and I increased the bar to get over for the value of my time, which is that I told you that I would be happy to do this, but I need to keep it to 30 minutes, which is the thing that I very standard do. And the reason for that is because most podcasts are an hour. That's a lot. That's 1/8 of my workday. And I have a lot that I need to do. And so I figure if somebody wants me enough, then they will adjust a little bit and work within my time frame. This isn't like a power move or something. It's just, this is the amount of time that I have to offer. And if that is worth it for you, then you will do it. And if not, then that's fine. And look, I will change this situation depending on the circumstance, right? Like if Tim Ferriss reaches out and wants me on a show, I'm not going to be like, yeah, I only got half an hour, right? But that's because I understand the value that being on his show will bring me. I know what that audience is like. I can see how it would fit into my goals. You are more of a wild card. You seem like a really nice guy. I'm really happy we connected, but I didn't know the answer. So I'm going to take a gamble, but I'm also going to figure out like, what is my risk reward? And I think that everybody should be doing something like that too.
So as we went through too, and this was an incredible thing. Like, you have the power, literally, to like your endorsement or third-party validation of somebody can really change somebody's life. But it was interesting because I was listening to an episode of yours, and you were talking about a situation with David Chang. And you were talking about the envy of others, right? No matter where you're at. And everyone in the media world could look at Jason Feifer and be like, oh man, if I was in that situation. But you brought up a very, very incredible point that you don't always know the entire story. But that David Chang thing hit me hard. Can you talk on that?
Oh man, you really went deep in my work. David Chang, I talked to him a long time ago. I mean, what I remember about David Chang, famous chef, Mofuku, and so on, is how. So David Chang struggles with depression. He's been very open about that, and he has accomplished basically everything that anyone in his position would ever hope to. And what he has found, to his great alarm, is that it isn't enough, and it still leaves a hole. And I can't remember if that's what you were picking up on, but that's the thing that really stuck with me. And the anecdote that really in that vein has always stuck with me is so there's a guy named Ryan Holiday, best-selling author of all sorts of things, and he wrote this thing once. I know Ryan a bit. We didn't talk about this, but I just read it in his blog. He wrote this thing once about how he learned that he was a New York Times best-selling author for the first time, and what happened was, so he had aspired to do this, as any author does. And he was out mowing his lawn, and he got a call from his agent who told him the news. And he was like, that's amazing. And then the phone call ended. And then he looked around and he was like, did anything change? No, I guess I should just keep mowing the lawn. That's what he did, right? Because the thing is, like, these external validations don't actually change your life. Like they don't. And so you need to orient yourself around more of an understanding of what it is that you want and what success looks like and what satisfaction looks like, and stay there. Because if you anchor yourself to, if I just get that thing, then it's going to change everything. If I just get that thing, then it's going to change everything. This thing that I've been working towards, if I just hit it, then everything will change. It never, ever will. That's what David Chang learned, and it really threw him for a loop. Ryan, the same. And I found that too. People treat me like like I'm whatever, sort of a big deal. It doesn't feel like that way to me. I'm just a guy who gets up in the morning and tries to make things, and that to me is healthy, is to be able to recognize that and never confuse the things that you've done with who you are.
Wow. So I was talking with my brother on my way to the studio today, and I was so excited. I sent him out the thumbnail of you, and he, he believes in me more than anything. And if my mom was still alive, what my mom would say when I call her to say, I'm excited to have Jason Feifer, the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, on the show, she would not react at all. All she would say was he excited to meet you? That's how my mom would act, right?
That's great.
But my brother asked me, he's like, so how did you connect with him? And I said, well, I reached out, and I thought in my head, Jason is already not my friend. So the worst possible thing that could happen has already happened. And the best possible thing is that he becomes my friend, because I'm going to force him to be that for the rest of my life. But you learn this part about putting yourself out there with Jimmy Fallon. And in listening to this part, this was mind-blowing for me, because most of the time people aren't willing to put themselves out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you the Jimmy Fallon thing. First, I just want to double click on that thing you just said there. That's really powerful, is, where are the stakes in all of your actions? And that's not to say that if the stakes are low, that you should be careless, right? Like the stakes here were low, right? You could reach out to me and I could not respond, and you'd be exactly where you started, or I could respond and maybe something different would happen. But you still have to treat those interactions with great respect. On my side, I believe very deeply in the power of being responsive. I think that being responsive is the single easiest, most impactful thing that you can do. Single easiest, most impactful thing for you to do. It takes very little time to respond to people. And even if you say no, like what I found is that people don't have an expectation of getting everything that they want when they reach out, but just hearing back from you is powerful. So when I respond to people and I say no, they thank me. They thank me for saying no, because they heard back, which meant that they were heard. And that's incredibly valuable. I have built people who, like a loyal audience of people who buy my stuff and follow my work, and they'll tell me it's because 4 years ago I sent you an email and I didn't expect you to respond, and you responded. And like, what was the response? It was like one line. It's not that hard. The simplest, most impactful thing you can do is show people that you have heard them. So anyway, with that said, Jimmy Fallon. So I interviewed Jimmy Fallon for Entrepreneur Magazine maybe 2 years ago or something, and I went to his office at 30 Rock, and we had a great time. And at the end of, like, I don't know how long I was in there, an hour and a half, 2 hours. Jimmy said, hey, if you need anything else, if you go home and you're like, there's a question that I forgot to ask Jimmy. He's like, just reach back out. And I said, Jimmy, I really appreciate that. I am not going to do that, because I've already spent all this time of yours. And I don't want to take any more, but thank you. And, it was great. And then I left and I went home and I started writing, and wouldn't you know it, there was this one moment where I was like, if I could ask this one other question that I didn't think to ask, this story would be so much better. And normally I wouldn't do this. I really wouldn't, because I don't want to impose on people's time. And I really believe firmly in like boundaries and respecting people's time. But I was like, well, but Jimmy did invite me to do this, so I'm going to do it. And I reached out to Jimmy's publicist and I said, hey, can I just get like 5 more minutes with Jimmy? He can just call me whenever. And he said, yeah, let me ask. And a week later, my phone rings and it's Jimmy Fallon. And I say, and Jimmy says to me, he says, it's so funny, because at the end of our conversation, I said, if you had any further questions, feel free to reach out. And Jimmy says to me, he's like, I offer that to everybody who I enjoy talking to, and nobody ever takes me up on it. And you did. And I said, Jimmy, it's funny that you say that, because I feel really bad that I've done this. Like, I hate that I've done this, because I told you I wouldn't, and you gave me a lot of your time already. And I want to respect that you're a busy guy, and I don't want to take any more of your time. And he's like, no, I'm really happy you did this because this shows me that you want to be thorough. And I love working with people who want to be thorough. You want to like get this right. And you're being really thoughtful about this. And that is why I'm excited to get back on the phone with you. And that interaction has really shifted the way in which I understand things, because we have this idea in our heads about what is good and what is bad, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. But if we don't test those ideas, then we don't discover that sometimes the things that we are holding ourselves back from because we think that they're bad are actually incredibly good. And in this case, I thought asking Jimmy Fallon for more time was a bad thing because it meant that I was greedy. But to Jimmy Fallon, what it meant was that I was a thorough and thoughtful person. And so he was happy to do it. There are things in your life that you have drawn boundaries around, and those boundaries are actually holding you back instead of pushing you forward. And you need to be testing those. And that was the lesson I learned from Jimmy.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about some sort of media insight, because I mean, you're the place where you reside, the circles that you roll in is incredible. And you talked about on one of your podcasts, you talked about two things: that you looked at a social media influencer, and you looked at their Instagram, you looked at their social, and it was very confusing. And you talked about two things that could build a brand, and why a person would come to the show.
Oh my God.
They were.
This feels like a quiz.
Do you want me to tell you what they were?
Tell me what they were.
Okay.
What did I say?
They were predictability and surprise. And when you said those two words, it blew. Can you share this? Because this is mind blowing.
Oh yeah, sure. So this is my formula for good media, and it works at scale. Like, this is the formula for Entrepreneur Magazine, but it also works on a micro scale. Like, this is the formula for your Instagram feed or your LinkedIn feed or your podcast, or like whatever it is that you do. If you are in business, if you are in the world in some way, then you should be in some way or another a small media creator. You should be putting things out in the world that capture people and draw them into you. And so here is the formula for good media. I mean, Kelly, you already said it, but let me explain it. So it is that good media is a balance, the right balance of predictability and surprise. So here's what that means. If somebody subscribes to this podcast right now, it is because, Kelly, you have done a good job of setting the expectation of what kind of value people are going to get from this. And they've assessed that, and they've said, yes, that is value that I want in my life. This helps fulfill some particular need that I have, whatever that is, be it it's making me a better person, it's entertaining me, whatever it is. They have some idea of what it is. And you have helped to set that by creating the thing that you've created thoughtfully. And so you need to deliver on that reliably. That is the predictability. People come back to this every time because they expect it to be predictably valuable in the same way. But it also has to be surprising. It has to be surprising because you don't know, in this case, who your next guest is going to be and what you're going to draw out of them and what the experience is going to be like. Now, this sounds obvious, but think about how you could get the balance wrong. What if it's too predictable? What if it's too obvious? What if it's like, ugh, Kelly, I've heard about that 20 times. Like, you stop listening. But also, what if it's too surprising? What if you just veer off course and instead make this a podcast about, I don't know, bodybuilding or something? And people are like, that's a surprise, but it's a bad surprise because I don't want it. I don't want that. That doesn't fit me. You have to understand your audience's needs so much so that you understand what the right balance of predictability and surprise is for them. And if you understand that, then you build an audience. And if you build an audience, then you grow relevancy. And if you grow relevancy, then you can build whatever you want.
So, Jason, you've got about a minute and a half, and I started the podcast because of my two kids, Maddox and McKenna. I didn't want them to worship idols. I just wanted to be inspired by icons like you. So what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names and call yourself Uncle Jason, it would be awesome.
Oh, my God. Okay, I love it. That's a wonderful mission. I got to think about that. All right. First of all, hey, Maddox and McKenna, you've got a really cool dad. This is Uncle Jason, and you might find that weird that I'm calling myself Uncle Jason. I find it weird too, but your dad asked me to do that, so that's why I'm here. And look, my advice for you is very simple, which is that whatever you want to do not limit yourself to whatever you think the path to that thing is. because the greatest mistake that I've seen people make as they have built their careers and built their lives is that they had such a specific, narrow idea of what they wanted that they turned down all of the other opportunities along the way to getting that thing. But what I have found in my own career is that, in my own life, frankly, is that the things that are most meaningful to me are things that I didn't anticipate, that I didn't look for at the very beginning of the journey, that I picked up along the way. And getting there is not a simple path, and it shouldn't be a straightforward path. It should be a zigzag. It should be you do this, and then you kind of go over there and you meet that person and they tell you about this thing, and then you try that other thing and you learn something. And because you learned something, it created this new opportunity. And you just zigzag your way through the world, discovering that the things that you had never heard of are actually the things that are going to matter the most. So that is the lesson from Uncle Jason. I am sorry for calling myself Uncle Jason. It's probably weird.
Jason, you're an absolute genius. I appreciate you. It is 9:29, and as I promised, I would get you off the podcast. So I want to tell you that I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life, and you're officially off the hot seat.
Oh man, this was so great. Thanks, Kelly. You were a gem in every way.
You're awesome, man. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you. You too.
Achieving, cause we believing it's for certain. We put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting right before your eyes. So it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we